I bought my sister an apartment as a wedding gift. I paid for the venue, the flowers, the dress. But a day before the wedding she told me, "Oh, by the way, leave your wife and kids at home. They don't fit the luxury theme." I smiled. And when she walked down the aisle the next day, a special delivery arrived that she'd never forget. I never thought I'd be that guy, the one posting on Reddit at 2 a.m. venting about family issues. But here I am, sitting in my office, a glass of bourbon in hand, contemplating the wreckage of what was supposed to be my sister's perfect wedding. I paid for everything: the venue, the flowers, the catering, the lavish designer dress. And what did I get in return? A casual, "Oh, by the way, don't bring Lucia and the kids. They don't fit the luxury theme." Yes, that's what my sister Valeria told me. I should have seen it coming. In fact, I did see it coming. But I guess there was still a part of me, a naive, hopeful part, that believed she still had some respect for me. Turns out I was wrong. The moment I broke happened the night before the wedding. Valeria had booked a table at one of those pretentious rooftop restaurants where a tiny plate costs more than my employees make in a day. I went, thinking it would just be a last-minute meeting to finalize ceremony details. Instead, she dropped that bomb between sips of overpriced wine. "Oh, by the way," she said, barely looking up from her phone, "I need you to come alone tomorrow. Lucia and the kids, well, they don't quite fit the aesthetic." I thought I'd misheard. "What?" She sighed as if I were an idiot. "Rodrigo, please. You know what I mean. It's going to be a luxury event. High-profile guests, professional photographers. Everything has to look perfect. And Lucia is lovely, but you know she's a bit rustic." Rustic? That was the word she used. As if my wife were some old plow instead of the woman who stood by me when I had nothing. As if my children, my own flesh and blood, were some kind of embarrassment to her grand event. I felt my jaw tighten, my hands clenching into fists under the table. But Valeria just kept scrolling through Instagram, completely indifferent. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice steady. "You don't want my wife and children at your wedding because they're not fancy enough?" She smiled as if I'd finally caught on. "It's just for the image, Rodrigo. You understand, right?" I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. "And let me guess, I'm still paying for everything?" "Of course," she laughed, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You're the older brother. It's what you do." I stared at her for a long moment, feeling something inside me twist and break at the same time. And then I smiled. "You're right," I nodded. "That's exactly what I do." I picked up my glass, finished it in one gulp, and stood up. "Tomorrow you'll get exactly what you deserve, Valeria." I walked out of that restaurant without another word. But the moment I got into my car, I pulled out my phone. "Hello," I said when the call connected. "Change of plans for the wedding. Get ready. We're going to make this a day she'll never forget." Flashback. The signs were always there. Looking back, I should have known. Valeria never really respected Lucia. I remember the first time I brought Lucia to a family dinner. We had just started dating and I was excited, naive even, to introduce her to everyone. Lucia, being Lucia, wanted to make a good impression. So she baked a homemade apple pie. She spent hours perfecting it. We walked into my parents' house, the aroma of roast beef and expensive wine filling the air. My mother greeted us, my father nodded from his usual spot at the bar. And then Valeria appeared, in an outrageously expensive designer dress. She looked Lucia up and down as if she were an insect under a microscope. "Oh," she said, forcing a smile. "You actually bake something. That's cute." Lucia just smiled and offered her the pie. I thought it would be nice to bring something homemade. Valeria barely touched it. In fact, later that night I found it untouched in the trash. And that was just the beginning. She'd always forget to invite Lucia to family gatherings, make snide comments about her simple style. Once, she introduced her to her friends as Rodrigo's little country project. I let it slide for years. But this telling me that my wife and children weren't good enough for her wedding? That was the line. The calm before the storm. Here I am now, hours after the wedding, reading the messages flooding my phone. Valeria's losing her mind. The guests are confused. The internet is having a field day. And this is just the beginning. Because Valeria wanted a perfect wedding. And I made sure she'd never forget it. I arrived at the wedding alone, just as Valeria had requested. Black tuxedo, serene expression. Smiling at everyone as if nothing were wrong. Because in just a few hours, Valeria's dream wedding would become something else entirely. The venue stunning. Chandeliers, marble floors, a floral arch straight out of a magazine. I know I paid for it. The guests, high society, dressed to impress, sipping champagne like they were at some exclusive gala. Each one handpicked by Valeria. Ordinary people forbidden. The bride standing at the altar, resplendent in her designer gown, basking in the admiring glances. She had no idea what was coming. Everything was going too well. Too smoothly. The guests were seated. The music started. Valeria began her walk down the aisle. And that's when the first special delivery arrived. An employee wheeled a huge, beautifully wrapped gift to the center of the ballroom. It was the picture of elegance Tiffany blue with a gold bow, standing out like the centerpiece it was meant to be. Valeria stopped midway, beaming. She thought it was another extravagant gift from me. The priest hesitated. The guests murmured, "Rodrigo." Valeria called sweetly, tilting her head. "What is this?" I rose from my seat, adjusted my cufflinks, and smiled. "Just a small special detail for you, little sister. Go ahead. Open it." She giggled softly and motioned for one of her bridesmaids to pull the bow. The box burst open. And then a chaos. 6 live chickens exploded out. Yes, real live clucking, flapping chickens. They erupted from the box like fireworks, flapping their wings, scattering feathers through the air. One landed on the wedding cake. Another hopped onto Valeria's dress. A third launched itself directly into the guests, knocking over a tower of ridiculously expensive champagne. Screams. Guests leaping from their chairs. Shattering glass. A guest tripped over a tablecloth, sending an entire tray of appetizers crashing to the floor. And Valeria panicked. "What is happening?" she shrieked, desperately trying to pull a chicken off her lace gown. And me? I just stood there watching it all unfold. The second surprise, the big reveal. The chickens were just the opening act. Because while Valeria was spinning in circles, desperate to save her dress, the ballroom lights dimmed. The enormous LED screen at the front of the room flickered on. And then, in perfect HD clarity, a video began to play. It was Valeria. Clips of the horrible things she'd said about me, my wife, and my children, all captured in audio. Clip 1. Lucia is sweet, but let's be honest, she's just a country bumpkin with good luck. She wouldn't know real class if it hit her in the face. Clip 2. Rodrigo is so easy to manipulate. He just gives me money because he feels guilty for being successful. Clip 3. Honestly, I don't even like kids. I don't want my wedding looking like a daycare. Clip 4. The final blow. Rodrigo's a fool. He pays for anything. Watch me take advantage of him. Complete silence. Absolute silence. The guests stared at the screen. Valeria froze, her face completely pale. Her fiancé turned to look at her as if she were a stranger. Her new in-laws murmured among themselves, exchanging looks of disbelief. And this wasn't even over yet. Absolute silence. The guests stared at the screen. Valeria froze, her face completely white. Her fiancé turned to look at her as if she were a complete stranger. Her new in-laws murmured among themselves, exchanging looks of pure disgust. And then came the final piece of the plan. The final blow. I retrieved the microphone, adjusting it. My voice was soft, controlled. "Valeria. I'm so sorry you had to hear that. I mean, really, who could have recorded those things? What terrible luck with the timing, right?" She whirled on me, shaking with rage. You set me up," she screamed. I shrugged. "Set you up, Valeria? I just played your own words. You did this to yourself." She lunged for the microphone. I took a step back. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Remember that luxury apartment I bought you as a wedding gift? Yes. It's not yours anymore." A legal representative stepped forward, handing her official documents. "I just transferred the deed to a nonprofit that provides housing for struggling farming families. Seemed more fitting, don't you think?" Her mouth dropped open. Her fiancé's mother gasped. Her fiancé turned, gave her one last look, and walked away. Just like that. Wedding over. The last scene. Security escorted Valeria out. Guests whispered, some recording everything. And yes, it went viral. Valeria tried calling me, texting me, begging me. I didn't respond. Instead, I took my wife and kids out to dinner. A warm, cozy place. A place where we were actually welcome. As we laughed over burgers and milkshakes, Mateo, my 8-year-old son, looked at me curiously. Daddy, is Aunt Valeria still going to have her wedding? I smiled mischievously, taking a sip of my coffee. She had one son. Just not the one she expected. I thought I was done. I really did. But Valeria, she just couldn't let it go. After the wedding debacle, I ignored all her calls and messages. Lucia and I took the kids for a weekend in the countryside. Fresh air, good food, and zero drama. But when we returned, my phone was overflowing with hundreds of missed calls, text messages, and voicemails from Valeria, my parents, and even some of her would-be in-laws. Apparently, this whole thing had exploded online, and Valeria, oh, she wasn't handling it well. The internet never forgets. Some wedding guests had recorded everything, the chickens, the video, her fiancé walking out, and uploaded it to social media. Within hours, the videos went viral. Headlines started popping up everywhere. Luxury wedding turns into complete chaos. Bride humiliated in front of hundreds. What happened at the wedding that will go down in history? The comments weren't far behind. Did she really think she could insult her brother's family and get away with it? Karma acted fast. Not gonna lie, the chickens were a genius move. Rodrigo is the MVP for donating the apartment to people who actually need it. Imagine losing your husband and your home on the same night. Valeria's carefully crafted image shattered. She'd spent years building a flawless online identity, posting photos of expensive brunches, designer clothes, exclusive parties. But now people were dragging her through the mud. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. And worst of all, her ex-fiancé's family had completely cut her off. Valeria's downfall. I finally caved and answered one of her calls. She was barely coherent, hysterical. Rodrigo, fix this. You have to tell people it was a joke. Tell them it was fake. Do something. I sighed. Valeria, I didn't post the videos. Your own guests did. Maybe you should have treated people better. I didn't do anything wrong, she shrieked. You ruined my life. I corrected you. You have ruined my life. No, Valeria. You did this to yourself when you decided my wife and kids weren't good enough for you. She let out a frustrated sob. You don't understand. My life is over. Hugo's family won't talk to me. My friends don't want to be seen with me. My job, she stopped. I raised an eyebrow. Your job. Silence. And then a mumble. I got fired, Rodrigo. I blinked. Wait, what? Turns out, her company hadn't appreciated the bad press. Some of their clients had seen the videos and decided they didn't want to be associated with someone who openly disdained working families. So her boss, who had always been so proud of her elegance and class, decided to fire her. She was completely alone. No job, no fiancé, no apartment, no family willing to help. Valeria Delgado had hit rock bottom. Mom and Dad get involved. It wasn't even 20 minutes after I hung up with Valeria when my parents called. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but I already knew what they wanted. I answered with a simple, "What?" "Rodrigo," my mother sighed. "You've made your point. Don't you think it's time to let this go?" I laughed. Let it go? Like Valeria let my wife and children be utterly humiliated. "She's your sister," my father interjected, with his classic paternal authority tone. "You have to help her. She has nothing now." "That's not my problem," I said coldly. "Rodrigo, she's family," my mother pleaded. "Family forgives." Ah yes, now they cared about family. Now that Valeria was suffering, I took a deep breath. "Fine. I'll help." My mother sounded relieved. "I knew you'd do the right thing, dear. Thank you." "Yes," I said, a sardonic smile playing on my lips. "I'll help her. The same way Valeria helped Lucia when she needed support. I'll help her like she included my children at her wedding. I'll help her like she respected all the effort I've put into this family for years." Silence. "That's what I thought," I said and hung up. "Where is she now?" 6 months have passed since the wedding disaster. Valeria tried to make a comeback. Tried to reinvent herself on social media. Pretending to be a humbled, changed woman after her fall from grace. No one bought it. Now she's living in a small rented apartment, working at a job that pays a fraction of what she used to earn. Her exclusive social circle gone. Her luxurious lifestyle over. And me? My wife and I are better than ever. My kids are happy. My business is thriving. And best of all, I'm free. Free from being used. Free from the guilt. Free from the family toxicity. A few days ago, Mateo looked at me curiously and asked, "Daddy, do you think Aunt Valeria will ever come visit us?" I smiled, ruffled his hair, and said, "She made her choice, son. And we made ours." And for the first time in years I felt at peace. A year has passed since Valeria's wedding. That wasn't. I thought that would be the last I'd hear from her. But life has a funny way of coming full circle. Because last night she showed up at my restaurant. And she looked nothing like the Valeria I used to know. A year of karma. A lot has changed since the wedding. My business exploded after the wedding drama went viral. More people started coming to my restaurants. Turns out, people love supporting someone who stands up for their family. We expanded to 5 new locations, including one right in the heart of the city. It was my dream to open a flagship restaurant. And last night was our grand opening. My wife is doing amazing. She started a small organic produce business, working directly with local farmers, including her own parents. My kids are happier than ever. They no longer have to endure being treated as less than within their own family. And Valeria? Well, she didn't exactly land on her feet. She bounced between several low-paying jobs, but every time a new employer learned about the wedding scandal, she was fired. No one wanted to be associated with her. Her former friends abandoned her. Her reputation gone. Her lifestyle over. And last night she walked into my restaurant, the weight of the world on her shoulders. Valeria's desperate plea. I was standing at the entrance greeting customers when I saw her. No more designer clothes.
No diamonds.
No impeccable hairstyle. Just simple jeans, a modest coat, and an exhausted look. She hesitated at the door, and then walked slowly towards me. "Rodrigo." Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I crossed my arms. Valeria looked around the restaurant, taking in the packed tables, the elegant decor. The place was buzzing with energy. This was my success. Something I built. And for the first time in her life, I think she really saw it. "Can we talk?" she asked. I studied her face. A year ago, I would have laughed in her face. But now I just felt indifferent. "Fine," I said, leading her to a quieter corner. She took a deep breath. "Rodrigo, I messed up." "I know you did." I said nothing else, just waited. I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my friends. Hugo won't even talk to me. Mom and Dad can't help me. She swallowed hard. I need a fresh start. And I was hoping. She hesitated, then said it. "I was hoping you could give me a job." I stared at her. Of all the things I expected her to say, that wasn't one of them. "A job?" I repeated. "Yes," she nodded quickly. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need to start over. And you're the only one I have left." For a moment I actually considered it. Not because I wanted to help her, but because I wanted to see if she'd actually changed. So I asked, "Why should I hire you?" She blinked. "What? Why should I give you a job?" I repeated. "What do you bring to the company?" She was speechless for a moment. I can learn. I can do customer service. Or maybe marketing." "Marketing?" I cut her off. "You mean like the way you marketed me as an idiot who would pay for anything?" She flinched. "Or maybe customer service," I continued. "You mean treating people with kindness?" I paused. "Like how you treated my wife. My children." Her face flushed crimson. She had no answer. I sighed and leaned forward. "Valeria, let me make something clear. You see this restaurant? My success? It happened without you." She shook her head. "You spent years belittling me, calling my family rustic, acting like you were better than us." I shook my head. "I don't think you've changed. I think you're just desperate." Her lip trembled. "Please, Rodrigo. I have nowhere to go." I took a deep breath and made my decision. "Valeria," I said slowly, "the answer is no." I turned my back on her. For the first time in her life, she looked genuinely broken. "So that's it," she whispered. "That's it." I nodded. She swallowed, looked down, and for a moment I thought she might actually cry. But then she took a shaky breath, stood up straight and murmured, "Okay, I understand." And then she turned and walked away. No screaming.
No insults.
Just silence. And you know what? For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt at peace. Valeria finally understood that actions have consequences. That treating people like trash eventually catches up to you. And me? I was finally free. Mom and Dad's regrets. A few weeks after Valeria's visit, my parents called. I wasn't surprised. I figured they wanted to scold me for not helping her. But when I answered, my mother's voice sounded different. "Rodrigo," she said softly, "we need to talk." I sighed. "Now what?" We were wrong." "What? What did you say?" I asked. "We were wrong," she repeated. "About you. About Lucia. About everything." She paused and then in a quieter voice added, "And now we see what we did." I leaned back in my chair. "And what do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," she replied. We just wanted to tell you we're sorry." I wasn't expecting that. I was silent for a long moment. Finally I sighed. "I appreciate that. But it's too late." "Rodrigo, don't," she started. "I've moved on," I continued, cutting her off. "I have a good life, a great family, and a successful business." I paused, then added, "I don't need validation from people who only recognized my worth when they lost everything they had." Silence. "I hope you find a way to fix it," I said. "But I'm done." And I hung up. I wasn't angry. I wasn't resentful. I just didn't care anymore. Because for the first time in my life I was truly completely free.